Our Tom Hartman, he grew up in Michigan. His dad was a tool and die guy. He was a Republican, and that's how Tom learned to debate Republicans in a very loving way. I know that he misses his dad on his dad's birthday. Louise, his wife, went to school working at Howard Johnson's. He has wonderful children. He's an author, an entrepreneur, a former psychotherapist. He's a loving husband and father. He's a radio host, and he is slave to Higgins the cat. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to present to you one of my personal heroes, Mr. Thom Hartman.
Thank you. I'll vote for her. Or for Marianne Williamson, or for Earl Katz.
We're all great. We can all do a better job.
Oh yeah, we could go through the list. It's such a pleasure and such an honor to be here. Jim Hightower inspired me to completely rewrite my speech, so I've got a whole brand new speech here. I want to start with just a really simple, and this all has to do with why PDA is so important, with just a really simple statistic. From the founding of our republic, or our democracy, whatever you want to call it, from the founding of this country until roughly 1980, as productivity increased, and there were a number of times when productivity actually radically increased. The invention of the cotton gin, the invention of the steam engine that preceded that, the invention of the internal combustion engine, all these things, but with every step, as productivity went up, the productivity of working people, as it went up, the wages of working people went up. Literally from the George Washington administration to the Ronald Reagan administration, as productivity of workers went up, wages went up. And then something happened. And it was not an accident what happened. It was very well and very carefully thought out what happened. And what has happened, and I'll tell you how and why in just a second, but what has happened basically is that since the Reagan administration, wages have been flat for the last 33 years. We've had 33 years of Reaganomics, and as wages have been flat, productivity has continued to increase. And if wages, just average working people's wages, right now, the average working person in America, the median income in the United States for an individual worker is around 25 grand. For a family, for a household, is around 44 grand, because now 2 people are working in a household. These numbers were somewhat different a generation ago, but basically, so that's where it is. If wages had simply tracked productivity for the last 33 years, since Reaganomics took place, since the Reagan Revolution, the average household income in the United States right now would be $90,000 a year. Now, if the average working class household income in the United States was $90,000 a year, there would be no problem with Social Security. Not that there's much of a problem anyway, but Social Security would be, because Medicare would be fine. We would not have a budget deficit. We would have, and you'd have a strong middle class, and you'd have a strong social welfare movement, and all these other things. So what brought this about? Back in 1952, maybe it was 51, Russell Kirk published a book called The Conservative Mind. And yeah, I was exposed to this when I was a kid. My dad was a devotee of the conservative mind. John's nodding his head. Anybody who's really dug into politics knows about this book, because this book created the modern conservative movement. My dad and I used to watch William F. Buckley, Firing Line, on PBS. And Buckley used to cite Russell Kirk like almost every week. I mean, he would constantly be citing Russell Kirk in The Conservative Mind. And so, I've got to read this book. And in fact, in my book, Screwed, I got a whole chapter where I just kind of break it out. And what Russell Kirk said was, William F. Buckley's famous quote about conservatives is, conservatives are people who stand athwart the arc of history with their hand out shouting, stop. Right? But Russell Kirk was more than just a conservative. He was a radical. And what he was suggesting was that in fact, let me just back it up a little bit. This debate has been going on since the founding of the Republic. The big debate between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson was that John Adams was saying, don't change things. Keep it sort of like England. In fact, let's even put people in jail who publish newspapers who say bad things about the president. And Jefferson was saying, when there is change, when there is social ferment, when things go really, really nuts, that's good. That's how progress happens. Okay, so we've been having this debate for a long, long time. So back to 1952, Russell Kirk says, there is a coming movement, or there is a movement. I mean, he was referring to the New Deal. There is a movement that is producing social change in the United States, and it has succeeded in building a middle class that we've never seen in the United States. And he was right. And what will come out of that middle class, Russell Kirk predicted. This book is still in print. You can read this. What will come out of that middle class is that at a certain point, that middle class will become sufficiently self-empowered that women are going to start demanding equal rights.
Oh, God, God. Hold on.
Gay people are going to start demanding a place in society. African Americans are going to demand the equal rights. You're going to have young people talking back to their parents and saying things like, hell no, I won't go to that war. I mean, he literally was predicting this. You are going to see a youth revolution. And the young people are going to rise up and they're going to reinvent America all over again. And this is dangerous in Russell Kirk's mind. This is dangerous in William F. Buckley's mind. We've got to do something to prevent this. So what do we do to prevent this? Well, they put this program together. I mean, based on Kirk's book, you had, well, to a large extent, Lewis Powell in 1972, or 71, I think it was, 71, wrote his memo, the famous Powell memo to his best friend, his next-door neighbor, who was the president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, saying basically, we've got to take over the courts, we've got to take over the schools, both the colleges and the elementary schools, we've got to take over the media, we've got to, all this stuff. I've got a book coming out in November about all this stuff. It's called The Crash of 2016, and the title kind of tells you what's going on. But in any case, it was all rhetoric at that time, right? They started the Charles Koch Foundation, which is today known as the Cato Institute. They started the Heritage Foundation. They started building all this stuff just very quietly, very slowly, very carefully, step by step. Nixon put Lewis Powell on the Supreme Court, and so the Supreme Court started making these funny decisions like Buckley versus Vallejo. Oh yeah, speech. That's money. That's not property. That's speech. Speech, really? If I take money out of my pocket, This is speech? No, this is property. Exactly. It's not money. It's not speech. It's property. And so Buckley versus Vallejo, property is speech. And then First National Bank versus Bellotti. Massachusetts had a law that said that corporations can't engage in political activity unless it has to do with what that corporation is all about. And the First National Bank of Boston started engaging in politics that had nothing to do with banking, and Frank Bellotti, the Attorney General, busted them. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, oh no, and this was a doctrine that really started in 1815 with Dartmouth, and that's a whole nother rant, but in 1886, and I wrote a book about that too, it's called Unequal Protection. But this there's a bunch of them. But this doctrine that corporations should have rights under the Constitution. This was largely spoken in the First National Bank versus Bellotti case. And what's really interesting is that William Rehnquist actually wrote the dissent in that case, and he said back in 1886 this was wrongly decided. Well, it wasn't even decided in 1886. But anyway, I digress. So the pinnacle of this happened when Ronald Reagan was elected president. When Reagan was elected president, he kicked off Reaganomics. Literally, it was a revolution. The Reagan Revolution was a real revolution. It was a reactionary revolution to the New Deal and the Great Society, which was simply an amplification of the New Deal. And with the Reagan Revolution, Reagan declared war on working people. He cut the top tax rate from 74% down to 28%, which produces all this hot money. And hot money, of course, creates bubbles and bursts and and pops and things like that, and disconnected and also passed a change in corporate governance regulations that said that CEOs could be compensated. See, they tried to regulate CEO pay by saying that a corporation can only deduct the first $1 million of a CEO's paycheck from their income taxes. And so what Reagan did was, we'll get around that, give them stock, right? Give them stock options. And so now you've got CEOs who used to, spend 30 years in a company and work their way up to the top and always have the interest of the company in mind. Now they're looking at the interest of the next quarter because they want to cash in their stock options. So anyhow, Reaganomics has, and I can go through a whole long list, which I won't. But there's this whole long list of things that actually make up the Reagan Revolution. There's an actual epistemology associated with this. There's a list here. And the consequence of that is that wages have been flat and productivity has increased. Now, why would they want to do that? Because, hey, society was changing. We've got it. In their mind, they have to put a stop to that. They have to, and we see all this troglodyte type legislation that's been coming out ever since they've been empowered. So I would submit to you that we really, in fact, Alan Greenspan. I put this in my book, Screwed. Alan Greenspan in 1978 in the Wall Street Journal. He was asked, what's your principal job? Right? Is it inflation? Is it unemployment? What is it? And he said, my principal job is to regulate interest rates so that when the economy heats up, I can cool it down to maintain a certain minimum, these are his words, certain minimum necessary level of worker insecurity to prevent wage inflation. It's a verbatim quote from Alan Greenspan. To prevent wage inflation. Now, he wasn't worried about CEO and wage inflation, but average working people, we can't have wage inflation. And it's just ripped the guts out of the middle class here now, 33 years later. And this is why I think Progressive Democrats of America is so important, is because even the Democratic Party has, or at least many parts of it, have A, bought into this, and B, because of this doctrine created by the Supreme Court that really started back in the 19th century but came to fruition with Buckley and First National Bank, and then got all tied together in one nice little package with a ribbon on it in Citizens United. Because of this doctrine that was never voted on by any legislature. No legislature ever said, hey, corporations should be people and money should be speech. Never. In fact, go back and read the 1887, Grover Cleveland, the only Democrat who was elected after the Civil War, and elected twice, and not consecutively, oddly enough. His 1887 speech, the State of the Union address. In his State of the Union address, this is a year after the Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad case. He said, corporations which should, and we were talking about this in the car on the way out here, corporations which should be the carefully restrained servants of the people have become the people's masters. The iron heel of corporate power is upon the neck of the average American citizen. This is his State of the Union address in 1887. He's talking about what the Supreme Court is doing. Wow. And how it's changing the nature of America. And that kicked off the charter mongering era and all the changes in corporate law. So bottom line is, we haven't had a genuinely progressive president since Harry Truman and Franklin Roosevelt. They were the last ones who really took names and kicked ass. They were the ones, Bill Clinton, he did some great stuff. I mean, God bless Bill Clinton. He did some great stuff. But he also brought us NAFTA and CAFTA and SHAFTA and all that stuff. And it's kind of get along, go along. And Barack Obama has been, we can be peaceful, we can have friends, maybe we can get these guys to like us. I don't think so. I just don't think so. And it's not that they're like bad people or bad Democrats. It's that when Franklin Roosevelt was elected, the American people we had seen 3 years of Hoovernomics. We'd seen 3 years of Republican economics. America was devastated. Everybody got it. Everybody got it. And that's why he was elected with an overwhelming majority in the House and an overwhelming majority in the Senate. And then he went, and so he was able to do what he was able to do. And the vast majority of Americans now don't get it, tragically. And that's the important thing that Progressive Democrats of America are doing, is they're helping Americans get it, that 33 years of Reaganomics has devastated this country, and that Reaganomics, when it's practiced by Democrats, is just as bad as when it's practiced by Republicans, and that we need to be pushing Democrats in a progressive direction from the outside. And from the outside, because Progressive Democrats of America is not affiliated with the Democratic Party. It is an independent organization. So it's working the inside-outside game. It's going inside their offices and saying, hey, we're here. We're not going away. And we'll even raise money for you if you start being progressive, and we'll help you out and we'll make things happen. But if you're not, we're gonna be on your backside. We're gonna change things. So, I mean, it's really an amazing thing when Bob Dole comes out and brags about being the father of the Clean Water Act. I mean, literally. And you can't find and our Democratic president is not saying that. Right, is like, well, maybe we could have this pipeline. I don't know, maybe. So this is the work of Progressive Democrats of America and organizations like this is so critical, and therefore it's such an honor for me to be here. And let me just encourage you to do everything you can to support PDA and participate with PDA and call all your friends and tell them to go to the website and start a local chapter and let's make this happen, because we can take America back. It's a cliche, but really that we can reverse the Reagan Revolution. That's what needs to be done. Thank you very much.